Welcome and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants are in listen-only mode in the question and answer session of today's conference. At that time, you may press star one on your phone to ask a question. I would like to inform all parties today's conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I would now like to turn the conference over to Jason Sproul. Thank you. You may begin.
My name is Jason Sproul, and I work with the U.S. Commercial Service in Los Angeles, California. I would like to welcome you to today's webinar, which gives a sneak peek of the Asia Pacific Business Outlook Conference, APBO, which is brought to you by the U.S. Commercial Service of the U.S. Department of Commerce and the Marshall School of Business at the University of Southern California. We are pleased to be celebrating 30 years annual Asia Pacific Business Outlook Conference, which will take place in Los Angeles on March 27th and 28th. APBO is a comprehensive networking and learning experience designed to provide U.S. exporters with the contacts and knowledge to grow and succeed. That provides an in-depth and current information about Pacific Rim trade, investment, and finance policies and practices impact exports to Asia. APBO 2017 will feature 50-plus international trade experts who will be sharing their international perspectives on new challenges and opportunities that influence business decisions, especially choices concerning Asia-Pacific economy. Today, we'll be hearing from three of the dynamic APBO trade experts. Dubey, Director, USC, U.S.-China Institute, a program of USC Annenberg School of Communications. Anna, Senior Officer, U.S. Commercial Service, U.S. Embassy, Japan. Marv Seppi, Chief Operating Officer, CT Global. Note, today's webinar is a preview of the APBO conference, and we'll be quickly moving through the presentations to give you a sampling of what you can learn from participating in APBO. Attendees of the full APBO conference will have 2 full days of multi-track Outlook sessions, workshop sessions, and pre-scheduled one-on-one meetings with U.S. Embassy-based commercial officers. Also, we're taking a few questions after all 3 speakers have a chance to do their presentations. I would now like to turn the webinar over to our first presenter, Clayton Dube, Director of the USC U.S.-China Institute, speaking about promises and uncertainties, America and China.
Thank you so much. It's a great opportunity to preview the sorts of things that you can learn about at APBO later this March. We hope that you can join us then. Today, my task is to very briefly highlight some of the challenges in the U.S.-China relationship, but also some business opportunities that you may want to be conscious of. So here we're talking promises and uncertainties. And the reason is both governments have made all sorts of promises, yet not all of them have been acted upon. And so it's difficult to know how many of them will go through, and in going through, really might happen. But promises and uncertainties. Let's start with the big one. That has to do with economic nationalism. And look at the next slide, please. On the side, of course, we have just had the inauguration with President Donald Trump, and he emphasized America first. His trade czar, Peter Navarro, and Wilbur Ross, the incoming Department of Secretary head, or Department of Commerce head, have emphasized a desire to establish a good work relationship with China and with other countries. And they're concerned that that relationship hasn't always been good for the United States in the past. And so they've emphasized certain points. Now, President Trump has been talking about this for quite some time, and issues have come up. He had raised issues concerning currency, non-tariff barriers to American business getting into China, these kinds of questions. So we certainly know about the economic nationalism on the American side, but there's economic nationalism on the Chinese side too. And one of the things that happened last week is that President Xi Jinping made his first ever address to the Davos World Economic Forum. And he emphasized how open China is. And in many respects, is as open as it has ever been. But there are important sectors that are still closed to American business, and there are other sectors where there are regulations and problems for American businesses trying to access the large and growing Chinese market. So that's the biggest issue with regard to uncertainty. But there are others, security issues. Next, please. The next.
We're on the slide with South China Sea, conflict or cooperation.
Oh, okay, thank you. It hasn't come up for me yet, so I hope the viewers are able to see that. So one big issue that's come up is about the South China Sea. The South China Sea is vital. $5 trillion worth of trade passes through these waters, and it is a hotbed of activity. We had the China government building new islands, and we've had legal issues between the Philippines and China. We've also had rivalries involving the Vietnamese and China. And, of course, there have been issues between the United States and China. Next slide, please. You see the area claimed by China, you see some of those issues. And the third South China Sea slide, please. You can see that in 2001, there was a test of sorts between the United States and China, the so-called spying incident. And in 2009, another new president was tested in the so-called impeccable incident. We don't have time to go into these. But of course, just a couple weeks ago, there was another incident involving an underwater U.S. naval drone that was picked up by a Chinese naval vessel and later returned. These things have happened. So that's one issue that is out there, is whether or not security issues, whether or not freedom of navigation issues might impinge on the U.S.-China economic relationship. Next, please. On the mock-up, it's not the Chinese flag, but it looks a little bit like the Chinese flag, with the Chinese currency symbol as the leader, followed by the pound, then the euro, and the dollar. And this is the notion that everybody's looking at China, because China has been such an important engine for global growth. And this is something that we expect to continue. Even with its economic slowdown last year, the Chinese added GDP equivalent to that of Indonesia. And China, now the world's second largest economy, even if it's growing at a slow rate, is still making a big contribution to global GDP growth. Next slide, please. I've been uncertain. And so what you see on this slide is one of China's successful cultural exports, the Big Bears. It's an animated series that is popular in Europe and some other places in addition to China. Well, some marketeers at the shopping center right in the financial district in Beijing, they said, let's bring these popular cartoon characters to our mall. It'll help to attract children. And so on Children's Day, June 1st last year, they installed Toonie Bears. Just one problem. What do they symbolize? Next slide, please. So bears are pointing up. In fact, they were pointing at the offices of China's Securities Regulatory Commission, the SEC, for China. And this shook up folks. They said, oh, wait, if you've got bears pointing, that means there's going to be another market sell-off. Trouble will ensue. And so they said, let's point the bears somewhere else. But in the financial district, wherever you point those bears, they're going to be pointed at a bank, an investment firm, something like that. So that's a problem. And so things are so nervous, people can get so nervous in China that wound up, next slide, next please, they wound up just moving the Boonie Bears inside the mall itself. That's the nervousness that exists in China. Now, some of that is purely economics, but part of it is because China is on its way to, in November, a big political shakeup. Now, he knows that Xi Jinping will remain in charge come November, but possible that there will be some significant other changes. And everybody's holding their breath, waiting to exhale when that gathering takes place later this year. Now, is the world paying attention? Let that next slide. The slide from the Guardian newspaper emphasizes the size of the Chinese economy and the size of trade between China and various economies. Now, quite significant for the United States, but it's even more significant for countries like Australia, Japan, and Germany. All of them have profited a lot from China's economic rise. Since the United States, over the last 15 years, since China entered the World Organization, China's exports to America have increased by 66%. American exports to China increased by more than 150%. So the United States has been benefiting from China's increasing prosperity and China's increasing openness. And so we want to find ways to allow you to access this market and to grow your business. Now, Americans think that China already is the world's leading economic power. That's not the case. The United States is still has a much larger economy and some very important and dynamic sectors such as telecommunications, anything having to do with the internet and things like this. But China definitely is rising. If we go to the next slide, please. The 12th slide highlights Chinese economic growth has been quite a deal faster. China has been growing faster than the United States, but has also slowed a lot over the last year, 2 years. Look at big trends. So if we go to the next slide, we'll see that the Chinese Communist Party has been focused always and remains focused on retaining power, maintaining stability, fostering economic development, and encouraging a more equal distribution of that development. Now, China today is as unequal as the United States. There's a big gap between cities and countryside and a big gap between the rich and the poor. Next slide, please. Big challenge ahead for China. We don't have time to go into all these. They're trying to restructure their economy because it's been too dependent on heavy industry, too dependent on construction, on real estate, and this thing. China has failed to develop global brands. There are a couple of exceptions. China has a rapidly aging society. China's labor force, people used to go to China for labor, no more. China's labor force is shrinking. The environment, everybody has heard about these smog apocalypses and problems like that. The environment is in bad shape. And we all have already mentioned income and opportunity inequality, and that's led to a great deal of distrust between people. So some of the problems that China has. This slide emphasizes that inequality, which is manifest in the fact that people in the yellow portions of that map live on average 5 years longer than people in the red portions. That inequality, that's one manifestation of it. On the next slide, you can see how the shrinking labor pool is increasing wages. On that slide, you see that Chinese have an expectation of, in all of Asia, they expect the greatest wage growth in the coming years. Much greater, for example, than Taiwan, than Japan, than Hong Kong, and these places. Look at the next slide. The next slide shows China's population pyramid. And what I want to emphasize here is that two things. First, China is rapidly aging. China will soon have as many people over the age 65 as America has people of any age. Let me repeat that. China is aging much more rapidly than the United States. Part is because of the one-child family policy that's only recently been done away with, and partly this is a function of economic growth, having fewer kids. But nowadays, people are living longer. And so those of you with businesses that might take advantage of that, in providing nursing home help, special products to aid the elderly, if you have things like this to offer, if you're healthcare sector, there may be a big market for you in China. So that's number one. Point number two about this chart is that giant group in the red box. It has 400 million millennials. That is the third largest country in the world. China millennials represent a huge market opportunity. Now, I'm going to have to close off, so I won't be able to get through all of the other slides, but one of the things that I wanted to emphasize is the opportunity to tap into that market. China millennials are predisposed to like American culture, to like American products. They watch American television, American films. They are very, very much interested in these kinds of things. And so the market of millennials is most open. But there are a lot of obstacles to selling to millennials in China. And I think you can join us at APBO, and maybe we get into those. Big opportunities playing demographic cards. One, aging. Two, the millennial population. And three, we haven't had time to talk about it. If you have green technologies that can help Chinese environmental problems or help them produce faster with fewer energy inputs, you have an attractive market in China. But let me wrap it up there and turn it over to Jason and our next speaker.
Thank you. Next, I will now turn the webinar over to our next presenter, Anna Lagala, Senior Commercial Officer, U.S. Commercial Service in our U.S. Embassy, Japan, Tokyo. Speak up the Abenomics, the bull case for man.
Thank you, Jason, and good afternoon and evening to everybody that way. I'm very happy to join on a very crisp, clear morning here in Tokyo, Japan. So getting right in then to the presentation that I believe Jason has queued for you. That's a picture of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe at the closing ceremonies of the Rio Summer Olympic Games on 21st. And probably a lot of you saw that, and there are a lot of familiar elements in that image, perhaps associations with Japan from the Abe and the gaming film. That's Abe, if you didn't catch it, from his guys as a Super Mario. It's got the technology and the touch in the presentation that they made. It was quite impactful. Less common, perhaps, was the bit of self-irony and humor employed by such a senior Japanese leader. So that was an interesting part. I was glad to use that as a central image for the presentation that I'll be giving as the primary intro to Japan at the APBO conference that I hope you'll be joining in late March. So the subject matter revolves around the broad economic program of the man, named for him, APBOnomics. I think many of you are familiar with this project of economic revitalization that he launched shortly after coming into office now about 4 years ago. It was an economic program with fiscal, monetary, and structural reform elements. And that presentation, which I'm just going to thumbnail as a bit of a teaser for you, there's been some important developments and some important disappointments in the program that are quite important. But in the presentation, I'd also like to look ahead at the next recent changes to that policy that are noted ahead in 2017 and 18, which will be under ABE's watch as well. So I would pop right into my presentation this morning and switch over to the next slide entitled Why APBO. I'm going to, rather than go through the longer presentation, I'm going to pose quick questions for you. Why APBO? Why Japan? A bit of the teaser from the presentation. Well, Commercial Service Japan, the organization that Jason and I represent. And by March 2017, do you want to take the plunge and make sure you're in LA for the conference? So I'm the wise guy in the group. I got four wise at least answer. I think I'm on the webinar because of my consistency, or at least longevity. This will be the 9th year, considerably, that I'll have the privilege of joining a dozen and a half colleagues posted around Asia in the embassies and consulates to present on our take on the economy and the great opportunities for U.S. companies. And I've done that now 4 times from a posting in Hong Kong, and this will be my 5th time from Japan. And as Jason started out, APBO is in its 30th year, and it has that longevity for very good reasons. In my experience, it is truly unique. It is the efficiency of the concept of being these regional and thematic overviews in a very practical, effective way, aligning with the growth regions of the world, and the Pacific Rim, of course. There's a bit of theory involved, but just enough to set the stage. You've got a wonderful cast of characters, presenting of which you just heard one group. We have we enjoy a number of real expert luminary speakers, sometimes from the world of ethics or executive boardrooms and academics. And the group are the folks like me, who are the senior commercial officers based in these markets, and then, of course, 100 more business folk who are bringing, live operative business cases and experiences. And for all reasons, it's a fabulous ferment and mix over a couple of days of expertise. There's no better way to get a quick fix of what's happening in these markets. A photo happens to show an activity that a side trip we made right after a recent APBO, and we're at the fabulous headquarters of SpaceX near LAX, and that was a fabulous tour, as I recall. And picking the slide are my colleagues. I'm down in the front, and with me are colleagues from Kuala Lumpur, Jakarta, Manila, Singapore, and the District of Columbia as well, represented, of course, our headquarters. Even our colleagues love to get there. The folks who have been, lucky enough to be stationed in these countries, we love to come back to APBO a year and get a fix on what's happening in other markets, such as you just heard from Professor Dubey on what's happening in the China dynamo So fabulous conference, and that's my pitch for the why APBO. I would ask us to swing then into a bit of the teaser of my presentation, Japan. So you have this slide showing a mass of yoga enthusiasts. In my opinion, I think Japan is truly going to be one of the few markets to pay particular attention to at APBO and in 2017, and I hope you can come and hear full bullish case from the several Japan-related speakers. We always bring executive partners with us, folks doing business in this market for a number of years, and I've had the pleasure of coming back with a couple of real experts, a consumer goods market entry specialist and an entrepreneur who started several companies over here. So that's another advantage to the APBO formula. But quick to Japan. What I would do with this, or what I plan to do with my bullish case, is give a little bit of context, remind folks that Japan is a huge economy and a major U.S. partner. It's a $4 billion economy, about 7% global GDP, the U.S. and China. So China might be 2.5 times the size of Japan's economy at this point. It's a familiar story about Japan, and the reason both that people moved away and the reason why they need to check in again has to do with this series of unprecedented challenges which Japan has been confronting. We're with the bubble that burst at the tail of the 80s, early 90s. About 5 years later, Japan was severely shaken by the Kobe quake, the Asian financial crisis right on its heels, and then, of course, more recently, about 6 years ago, the triple calamity around Fukushima with the quake, tidal damage, and nuclear problems. But over the last 4 years, I think there have been yet even greater shocks and some real differentiators from those other traumas as large as they were. That is that the threats that Japan perceives as they look out in their neighborhood and globally are more identifiable, and they're probably more existential. And here I'd be referring to tensions in the South and East China Sea, both with China. The North Korean threat is an existential one to Japan, certainly. And then most current, the change since our electoral results are certainly putting the economic and commercial and foreign relations panorama into a totally new framework, and the Japanese are eager, as all globally engaged countries are, to know what that means for them. I would argue that the severity of those changes, together with something very new. We started with Mr. Abe, and that is unprecedented. The longevity of this prime minister now in his 4th year. We are used to Japanese leadership turning over almost on an annual basis, which has created a kind of policy paralysis. So my main point is that Japan not only has the need to be on the move, but it has the wherewithal to do so at this time. So no more time now other than just to tick down some of the trends that I would try to delve into a little more detail while I'm there. The top line one for Japan, and we just can't get away from it, is the continuation now for 25 plus years of slow economic and productivity growth. So I would argue more than any type of structural or border barrier is the issue for growing U.S. business even faster Japan than is the case. And the case is that a lot of companies are enjoying high margins and good business in this economy, even in this slow growth panorama. Second trend I want to hit is the unprecedented inbound tourism boom that Japan is enjoying. The number of visitors when I arrived here 5 years ago was below 10 million. We've now topped 20 million in a year. There's some interesting drivers of that. And we'll come back to the Olympic story. We'll come back to new legislation, which the first time will legalize integrated resorts, which involve casino gaming. So inbound tourism is a bright area that U.S. companies are tapping into as pervasive services and technology into that market. There's an energy revolution taking place that was kicked off, of course, or accelerated by the Fukushima problems, but it involves also not just the decommissioning and remediation of the nuclear plants, but renewable energies. There's a full-scale liberalization of the electric power sector as well. So that's the third trend. The fourth, stirring innovation and entrepreneurship, the missing ingredient, many would say, in the sustained growth story for Japan. Creates wonderful opportunities. So many companies are looking to the U.S. to increase the metabolism of commercialization of the great technology that exists here. So wonderful opportunities there. And picking off of Clayton's presentation, demographics is a huge trend to watch. Interesting similarity there, and the pace at which these two countries are aging. In the case of Japan, we have shrinking population layered onto the aging, a negative for macroeconomic growth, but some real silver linings, pun intended as well, that U.S. companies need to look at. In Japan, you've also got a significant debt situation to confront. So the big trends that I would want to cover in that presentation, and then list out some of the sectors or areas where there's great promise. Outbound foreign direct investment from Japan to the U.S. is booming, and while we're a trade-focused conference, we certainly look at the investment piece at APBO. Digital economy is the second sector where there's huge opportunity from cloud services, mobile commerce, fintech is coming on. Cybersecurity is a great one for the United States and Japan. The third would probably be healthcare. Spices and drugs are $40 billion U.S. markets. Combined. Things happening in regenerative medicine and assisted mobility solutions for this aging population. Health IT is a bright area. Home care. So that's a wonderful basket. Fourth one would be advanced manufacturing, from materials on to the Internet of Things. The fifth area, picking up on the energy revolution, of course, is the opportunities in supplying hydrocarbons and renewable energies and working on the nuclear situation. High-value food products is not an area that we delve exclusively in because we have our colleagues from the agricultural service doing that, but that's a bright area. Japan is our number 4 food market. Inbound tourism I mentioned, so everything from the sharing economy solutions to accommodate all those tourists to English services are in demand, and there's plenty of opportunity there. As most of my colleagues do, some watch-outs. What are particular aspects of market structure or business culture and etiquette that affect those opportunities? That would be, in a nutshell, what I would try to cover in the presentation. Ahead of any of those 5 drivers I put out, I'll come back quickly to that image. And the point is not only show that the Japanese are a tremendously fit nation, which they are, and they get along great in small spaces and in groups, which is an important sociological and economic feature. More importantly, just to stress that the point, which has been the biggest takeaway of my 5 years here, is that Japan's differentiator is not the technology, it's not existential threats or even political leadership. It's the differentiator of the people, the human resources that are here, the creativity, the seriousness, the resilience of the Japanese people. So asking in my pitches always folks to still their disbelief or to increase their optimism, even though Japan has been a slow growth play for so long. I think it's a bad and a tough bet to bet against the Japanese people. Now I would like to turn, as I'm running a little long, to the last 2 whys. One, my organization, Commercial Service Japan. For some reason, we've got some really good people, a total of about 40 staff in our 2 locations, 30 here in Tokyo and another 10 in Osaka and Kobe. And we are also covering, in addition to our trade and investment rich, our seafood sector and freeze area. We have a special attaché in that area as well. Our staff has an average of something like 14, 15 years of experience, so we've got some really solid people to help you with matchmaking, counseling, getting into the market, the nuts and bolts. So APBO-C off hopefully with your interests in the region, but then we also give you the connectivity to make next steps of the market. So that's the crew there, a playful photo of us here in the embassy in a more formal setting with Secretary Pritzker, who led a large energy and health trade mission to Japan a couple of years ago. So I would bring back to why now. Final slide. Those are a pair of images within Japan's superconducting levitating train, which you can't make out the screen behind my head, but we're 500 kilometers in a silk ride on a test track in Yamanashi Prefecture recently, and those are some. I think it's the governor of Maryland in the slide to the right. So everyone who comes through is delighted with the chance to try out the technology and imagine what it would be like to have it connecting, say, D.C. and New York on that corridor for the future. So now, the elements that I mentioned in those trends and opportunities are a big reason. The 2020 Summer Olympics, which Tokyo will be hosting, where we started with Super Mario emerging there at the Rio closing, is a tremendous driver and a reason why you need to redouble attention on Japan. The world will be paying attention to Japan. They're going to use this as a maximal opportunity to showcase technology and what Japan can do uniquely in so many fields. And it's all going to be all about youth. Included his presentation with the somewhat same demographic note on the one hand, and Japan is even advanced on China in that regard, in that fully a quarter of the population of Japan is already aged 65 and over. And the Olympics can be a perfect antidote to that, about energy, youth, and innovation. So we're really thinking that this is the next couple of years will be particularly bright in Japan. As mentioned, that tech is the play in Japan, and there are developments from the space station to the F-35 that are cutting edge and coming out now in Japan. The other reason as to why now is there's a mutuality inherent in our relationship and where we are. Japan is really struggling now to restructure its economy. The kind of things that we're strong in, from energy resources to entrepreneurial wherewithal to help in third markets, where Japan has great infrastructure capacity, but sometimes the difficulty in moving into these markets. There's just wonderful synergies. So for all reasons, Japan is a wonderful play, and I hope we can talk more about it at APBO, and I thank you very much for your attention with this necessarily rapid-fire overview.
Thank you, Andrew. Now, to quickly move over to our next presenter, Marv Sepe, Chief Operating Officer, CC Global. Marv Sepe will be speaking about how attending APBO helped my company. Marv?
Thank you. CC Global is a manufacturing company here located in Irvine, California, here in Southern California. And we do a composite material for utility projects, for power lines. We're big believers in APBO and certainly the interaction with the international community. We're really a $50 million company. About 80% of our sales are export. So knowledge and understanding of the regional markets is quite key to our market success. We've been attending APBO. I've been attending since 2010, nearly every year if I'm in country. And it's been a good benefit to us. Last year we had three attendees. It's an opportunity to hear from each of the senior commercial officers that come in. They come in with a very good, detailed explanation of their specific markets. You get a good opportunity to hear about key things that affect the market, affect your ability to go into these marketplaces, including the political considerations, the budget, spending priorities of each of these regions, the organizations and associations that may come into play or may need to be understood when in these markets, as well as demographics and trends, things that both Clayton and Andrew have discussed. The really vital pieces of information that help you form a market strategy choose to go into foreign markets. We have a very large business presence in Asia, so for us to continue to go in every year and to touch the senior commercial officers and to get regional to get updates of these specific regions and help us direct, change, or on any of our marketing strategies, this is a very good data point for us to do. I do take it on just about every year. The invitations that the senior commercial officers do, as I say, are quite valuable. That you can make with a senior commercial officer just to go up and discuss before, after, introduce yourself, talk about what you're doing. The general presentations is quite valuable. Share a business card, tell them what you're doing, why, what you're in country for, what you expect out of it. It's wonderful that they know who you are and why you're there. You are even luckier and do a little bit of planning. You do your one-on-one presentations with the senior commercial officers, then even better way to go. We've done that multiple times. We particularly spent time with the senior commercial officers from India, Indonesia, China, Mexico, Vietnam in the past. Sit down, say, we're in country. This is what we're intending to do. This is what our customer base is. This is what we think we'd like to accomplish. Can you give us any guidance? When you line up for your one-on-ones, they will do some research for you. They're going to look at the market. They're going to respond to the things you put into the questionnaire, your answers, and they're going to be prepared, and that becomes a very good interchange, a very good ability for you to kind of test what you're doing, and they have some very good information. An example for us was the Indian market, which is something we've got a long history with now, dealing with the national utility, one of the Power Grid Association of India, which is basically the government-owned utility. Some very good guidance from the senior commercial officer about changing that organization, what it's structured, what to watch for, which organizations actually have a better reputation as opposed to those that are quite sticky. All good information that we would not get from afar. This all generated by the commercial officers, and an excellent opportunity for us to get the data point. We always take time to meet with the senior commercial officers, even in the foreign environments that we're at. Indonesia, other markets, we go to the embassies, we spend time with the commercial officers. It's really in our best interest that they know who we are, what we're doing, they can help us. If there's ever a need for us to call upon them, they're to back us up, and a very good source for U.S. businesses offshore. So APBO, it's your best opportunity to see that concentration of senior commercial officers and really go explore those particular markets that you want to enter. It'll tell you, they're going to give you some very good information that we have used in the past for many markets that we've gone into, and it just becomes a very good tool that you can use as a piece of your business. So this is a very quick of what a company like ours would do. Again, we're not a huge company. So we are very aggressive in the international marketplace, and we want our resources from our government to help us. It's a good source. It's a good ad tool for you. It's a great opportunity to go plug into that at the APBO. With that, pretty quick little review, and I'll send it back to you.
And a big thank you to all of our speakers. Justin, are you there? We'd like to open it up for 3 questions. If you could cue that up for us, please.
Yes. question and answer session. If you ask a question, please press star 1, unmute your phone, and record your name clearly. Your name is required to introduce your question. If you need to withdraw your question, press star 2. Again, to ask a question, please press star 1. It'll take a few moments for the questions to come through. Please stand by.
Dustin did say press star 1, and then you prompted to game, and then Dustin will invite you in to ask a question. While we're waiting for some questions to come on, I'd like to go through a little bit of our closing of this webinar and let them know. Now we've had a sampling of the APBO program. We invite everyone listening to attend the Asia Pacific Business Outlook Conference to more about what's happening in the region that could help your business grow. APBO will take place in Los Angeles on March 27th and 28th. We want to make sure everybody is aware early bird pricing is available through February 15th. Additionally, all commercial service clients and all attendees of today's webinar will receive a $100 discount when registering. We will send out the discount code along with a copy of this webinar when it concludes. Finally, today's webinar is being recorded, and as I said, the downloadable link will be shared with all participants by email. Do we have any questions on the line?
Yes, our first question is from Mike McFarland. Go ahead, your line is open.
My question on sales going forward in China, are we seeing more of a growth coming in sales through brick and mortar stores or through online stores?
Definitely in online. China is the world's largest e-commerce market by far. Alibaba, for example, has more sales than Amazon and eBay combined. And so that is also a way for small American companies or large American companies to easily enter that market. Use Tmall, to use JD.com, to use those kinds of resources to sell into China. And a number of folks who will help put that together for you so they don't even have to manage it. They have Chinese-speaking customer support and that sort of thing. So, yes, it's definitely because of that growing millennial segment, that big millennial segment, in line play.
And how to get your brand name out there, because as they search online, there's so many different companies. So the best way to advertise so that millennials shopping online will find your brand name.
That question, and tracking that is tough. One of the ways to do it is through social media. It's inexpensive, and if you're clever about it and creative about it, you can reach that audience. Many people are setting up Weibo, the two big Weibo platforms there, but many people are using WeChat. Because in WeChat, you can actually even open up your own store and get millennials and others talking to each other. It's not just millennials using their phones. It's also that elderly population as well. 800 million people in China are using cell phones and are on the Internet. It is an unbelievable market.
Do we have a question?
Yeah, our next question is up. Caller, your line is open.
Maybe another caller?
Question at this time.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you to all of our speakers. We hope to see everyone at this year's Asia Pacific Business Outlook Conference, APBO, would like to bring this webinar to a close. Thank you.
Today's conference. Thank you for participating. You may disconnect at this time. Speakers, please allow a moment of silence and stand by for your post-conference.